Okay, this one. As America slips, the US is undermining what made it great. What are the opportunities for India? I will take a step back and put things into context here before we appreciate the article. What is foreign policy all about? Can you tell me? What is the purpose of having a foreign policy? What is a policy? What is a policy? Can you tell me what is there inside a policy? Welfare of the people. What is there in foreign policy? Very specifically, I'm asking welfare of the people is fine. It's a very general answer. Okay. Any other answer? Plan of action. Exactly. Policy purpose is to first list down the problems and give solutions. How? Through a plan of action. You need to have an actionable agenda. This is the purpose of a policy. Let's say national policy on children, national policy on old age people, national policy on women, foreign policy, national security doctrine. What are all of this? It's a compilation of the list of problems. The other day I asked you to do the homework, national policy on intellectual property rights. What is there in that document? If you have done it, you will understand. First, any policy document will clearly delineate the list of issues identified and the list of proposed solutions. What are editorials? It's a critique on why some provisions will work, will not work, or why they are not being executed and how to make them better. You identified a list of problems and then you identified some solutions. Then newspaper articles will come into the picture and say, boss, this is what you promised. You're not giving me that. This is the reason. This is a list of reasons why I think this is wrong. And therefore, I propose this as a fix to this problem. And this is the methodology you need to follow for almost every subject. Your ability to articulate a problem. First, identifying the problem. Articulate the problem in a very short way. Thinking of a solution through concepts. Then reading newspaper articles with the ability to identify if the criticism is valid or not, and then looking at a solution maybe from some other article or some other source. You won't have all of them in a single place. Maybe the article writer has an affinity for one of the provisions in the policy. If there are 10 policy objectives, they will pick up one policy objective and see what is the solution proposed by the government. Then it will go on critiquing that, citing many areas. As an aspirant, your job is not to get carried away by that lengthy argument and say this is the entire problem. Editorials often focus on some aspects which will gain national traction, which are considered to be important for them. Yes, there are weak points in that policy, and that's why they get criticized often. For example, I'll talk about one news item that is coming up. Maybe I will discuss it there. But if the institutions which are existing to ensure that a policy is meeting its end objective, if the members who are a part of those institutions are again controlled by the government, where is the room for criticism? Where is the scope for improvement? So there needs to be checks and balances and separation of powers even there. Ultimately, democracy is about accountability and transparency, not about distribution of power. It is not enough just to be represented. It is important for outcomes to be measured. Your worth in a democracy as a policymaker depends on outcomes, not representation. Representation is the beginning point, not the end point. A lot of debates focus only till this point. Okay, so this is the policy. Okay, understanding what is policy, why is policy important. Now let's extrapolate the same understanding to foreign policy. What is foreign policy? By this definition, you should understand by now, foreign policy is a document which will list down the vulnerabilities of India. These are the problems that India will be facing from neighborhood, from different countries, from different big powers, from economic angle, from security angle, from technology angle, and cultural angle, which will disturb the peace in India, welfare agenda in India. Our objective should be to not only safeguard ourselves but also spread the values that we stand for. Every country will try to do that. What are the values that India stands for? If India, do you see any history of imperialism in India? Not much, except for Cholas who tried to navigate the seas in the 12th century. And there is a reason behind that. Our scriptures have culturally refrained people from moving across the seas. Because if they move out of the sea, it is like you are abandoning your, you know, motherland and going elsewhere. And to enforce that kind of restriction, there were some caste rules that if you move out of your homeland, you will be socially ostracized. Because look at the fundamental philosophy of Indians. It is about renunciation. What do you mean by renunciation? Ultimate philosophy of Indian civilization, as we know, is about letting things go, not trying to store more and more. If you see the traditional salient features of Indian society when you're studying them, there are 4 phases in life: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and finally Sannyasa. Sannyasa means liberation. As a country which predominantly, no matter what philosophy we're talking about, take a look at great kings. Chandragupta Maurya, for example. How did he spend his last days? He gave up the kingdom, walked away. Because Indian philosophy, as such, the values that we stand for, is not about consumerism. Our philosophy or value system respects the limitation of nature and imposes conditions and regulates social behavior. Of course, it becomes dogma in the long run. When you don't tell the intent of a law, or if you don't tell the intent of a norm, cultural institution, it will become a superstition in the long run. Okay, so Indian foreign policy was never about occupying territories. It was about conserving and spreading the values that we stand for. A case to the point being Ashoka's Dhamma. We were giving the ideals of Dhamma to the world out there. And that's a important feature of how India conducted its foreign policy across generations. Today, we are not here to take up imperial ambitions and expand our territory. That's not our intent. The intent is to protect what is ours, protect the value system, protect the interests of Indians. And that's why we have adopted a strategy called realism, realpolitik, or strategic autonomy. Clear? Now, to achieve this, you have to respond to the global realities. In the absence of a unifying framework as to how we should conduct ourselves, that becomes slightly difficult. I will use this article to tell why it is becoming difficult sometimes. In diplomatic relations, if you clearly lay down that this is how I want to conduct my foreign policy, certain value systems, we do have scattered documents here and there, official statements, but we do not have a single document which says this is our foreign policy. And there is a reason for that, because it is difficult to create a foreign policy that will satisfy the needs of the diversity of this country, because something happening elsewhere will have an impact here. For example, Israel war is happening. People here develop affinity towards one party or the other. If you develop a rigid foreign policy stance, it is difficult to satisfy the agitation here. But in the absence of a unifying framework, at least in terms of intent, it is becoming difficult to navigate the complexity of the modern world. One of the complexity for now is how do we deal with US? Because let me tell you how US came into existence. US is a land of immigration. It's not like people who were always there are the ones building the nation today. Who are the original people staying there? The tribes. They're called Indians. They are also called Indians. Red Indians. The native tribes who are residing in the both the American continents have literally been marginalized. Their lands were taken away. They were pushed to a corner. And the people who came there are actually from elsewhere. They will have their origins rooted to Europe. And in such a huge piece of land, people came in with only one objective. The so-called American dream is all about wealth creation, and it is based on meritocracy. Sure, there is definitely opportunities for growth unlike elsewhere in the world. And the whole idea of American dream and the patriotism to the nation is contingent on how much the nation will provide the opportunity. In the present scheme of things, that is going for a toss, because the President of United States does not want to handle the issues smoothly. The threat and the nature of diplomacy is not very conducive for the very principles by which America grew. There are some case studies here. According to this article, America grew because of three main reasons. One, rewarding meritocracy. Two, economy. Three, universities. The so-called Ivy League universities, the best in the world, are there in US because they receive huge funding. They get funding from philanthropists, from the government. And on the top of it, you also have attraction from across the globe. The best of the talent are going to the US and they are supported, they are well funded. And of course, because of all these reasons, they are reaping the benefits. Now, with the nature of diplomacy, these institutions are suffering, they are not getting funds. What is the difference between American universities and other universities in that case? You won't have a difference, right? When you don't get funding, what will the talent do there? That's a problem. Second, tariffs, economy. What's happening on that front? Trump is continuously imposing tariffs, which is rising the costs, disrupting the trade relations. It's a temporary pain because ultimately it will bleed US as well. Because the trust in the country will get eroded. Yes, short-term disruption will be there. But do you really think investors, even in the US, if they are bleeding, if their systems are getting disrupted, they will stay in America forever? Obviously not. Either he should be thrown out of the office, or if that is not possible, they will move their entire production across different parts of the world and create global value chains. Meaning, if there are 10 steps in the process, each step can be in 10 different countries. And this is optimized in a way that it will reduce the overall cost. And India can leverage this opportunity. There is a term called intellectual tribalism. Please note this, intellectual tribalism. I've posted this even on the Telegram channel, you can go through that. Intellectual tribe, what is a tribe? Tribe is a group of people coming together, having a similar ideology, staying together. They live in small communities. When it comes to scientific temper, research, logic, you cannot have this debates, I am right, you are wrong. That kind of a debate cannot exist in science because science is universal. Do you think Newton's third law will change in America and India? For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Will that change in US? Will that change in India? As long as we're talking about physics and not culture, that law holds valid. In India, if, for example, if someone threatens, at max, they might slap the other person, just like how Maharashtra, issue happened, where the politician slapped. But in the US, you might get gunned down. Slap is definitely better than a gunshot. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction may not hold true when it comes to culture. But as long as we're talking about science and physics, it's very much valid. Right. In such kind of a scenario, how should we deal with institutions? So this article talks about, one, what are the opportunities available for India in the new global order? Here we are only talking about India and US. But I am extrapolating this article for any international relations issue, and I'm talking about a scenario where India positions itself as a global leader. What does it take for India to position itself as a global leader? This is what we're trying to understand. Okay, so the article talks about three major issues. One is, see, I particularly like the intro of this article. I want you to read this. I'm reading it out. An autoimmune disease occurs when your body's immune system treats its own healthy tissues as invaders and attacks them. Look at how you beautifully use different concepts. See, in your essay writing, Sometimes you have to learn from editorials, right? When the very immune system that exists to protect you is destroying you, that is an autoimmune condition. This comparison, this analogy of how US is destroying its own institutions, it's like cutting the branch on a tree on which you are seated. And this is an opportunity. Instead of cribbing about it, the author says we have to use this opportunity, and that is what strategic autonomy really means. And you have a very short window of opportunity. Do you really think the American citizens and the investors there and the universities there will continue to let this happen for one term after the other? No, right? They will want their way. That is the power of democracy. If things are not fixed, anyway, he is going out of power. Because as per the American Constitution, a president can only have 2 terms. There is less likelihood that he will get re-elected, if unless and until he decides to change the constitution, which is not so easy. So we have a short window of opportunity to fix our foreign policy. It's an opportunity. A crisis somewhere is an opportunity for India. You have to look at every crisis like an opportunity. And this applies not just for countries but also for individuals. Every crisis will give us an opportunity to reinvent. Of course, it is very painful. It is very slow. But you have to put that intent. You have to show that intent to progress forward. You cannot, stop there. So in the short term, India will definitely suffer. We are not ready for this kind of situation. We have to use that opportunity. The 3 areas where US is strong, that's getting weaker. Globally, economies are no longer willing to depend. For example, see the strategy of China. It's silently decoupling from US economy. And that's why dollar price is falling across the globe. Because US had a lot of dollars, it is dumping them in the market. As long as supply is constrained, only then dollar will have value. If it is abundantly available everywhere, obviously dollar will fall down. So in response to how China is dealing, India should also respond, right? We have to become stronger. Otherwise rupee will get weakened. That is also happening. So this article says we have to use this opportunity to work on our universities, to work on our engagement with the global south who are facing the pressure, to become the voice of the global south, and work on our economic relations and strengthen the economy and the institutions, economic reform. Schemes like Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, all this should develop quickly. Invest on human capital, skills, etc. Basic funda. Same, even in foreign policy, first strengthen India. Then you no longer have to depend elsewhere, right? So let's say, for example, you don't have that resource. Yesterday we spoke about critical minerals. We don't have critical minerals. We don't have crude oil. What should we do? Right now we are depending on crude oil. If you want to depend on critical minerals, at least reduce the dependency. Are we moving in that direction? Are we working on investing in R&D where we can recycle the same material? Why can't India become the global hub of critical mineral recycling? This is the next window of opportunity for India. Are we moving in that direction? This is the area where you will create a lot of jobs. Are our universities getting ready for the transition? Energy transition will just not happen like that. It's not like you will replace a petrol car with an electric vehicle and things will be automatically fine. How do you service it? How do you manufacture that battery? How do you fix that problem of software upgrades? You need to have skilled professionals to service that car. In the absence of this kind of back-end work that Indian government should do, or any state should do, foreign policy will also become less effective. Both should go hand in hand. This is the framework of thought I want you to develop. Clear? India's AI ambitions needs bipartisan consensus. Parliament must be brought in. See, the whole point is, last year we have had India AI mission. Some budget is allocated to that. What is happening on that front? How are we spending that money? What are the outcomes? There needs to be a debate on such an important technology. We should have a vision that is in alignment with global standards. Today we have, many people actually trolling Indian, software engineers, because India is considered to be the software capital, supplier of the software engineers across the world. Best of the best talents. For example, an AI application called Perplexity. I don't know if you know this. AI tool called Perplexity. That is headed by an Indian, a South Indian, who migrated to the US and is developing the technology there. Sundar Pichai has Indian origins. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, has Indian origins. We take pride in the fact that on social media, everybody is like, oh, it's so great that most of the top CEOs are Indian origin. Do they feel that affinity to India? Do you really think if they exert their Indian identity there, they will get accepted in the US? No, right? They will prioritize whatever identity that gives them. So they might have an emotional attachment, but they will be forced to act only in the interest of their company, whatever works for that company. It's pointless to take pride. Same kind of messages will keep on circulating. For example, when Kamala Harris was, competing, Indians are like, oh, she's an Indian. Fact is, they don't care. They don't care. And it's a shame that if India is taking pride in people who left the country, this is what it is all about. I go back to the same line. कोई भी देश perfect नहीं होता है. उसे perfect बनाना पड़ता है. It's a dialogue from a movie called Rang De Basanti, and this is my personal take. I'm just imposing my personal take. You're free to agree or disagree. Country becoming great doesn't mean building great institutions, as in, big buildings or having something worthy of showcasing on a global stage. That is important. That alone is not going to make it. I'll take a recourse and tell a Telugu line by Gurjada Apparao. Desamante matti kadoi, desamante manchula, which roughly translates into a nation is not just about the territory and the soil therein, but it's about empowering the people to express their potential. In the absence of an accountability mechanism for such an important technology, where we don't know what are the steps taken, because this is a technology where more than anything, the speed with which we work is going to give us the advantage. There are many trolls on social media. When China is building DeepSeek, the best thing that we can think of is just virtually absent from Indian imagination. Can you tell me an Indian equivalent that is on your fingertips? Just like that, DeepSeek. US has OpenAI. China has DeepSeek. If India really wants to retain its strategic position as the global hub of software engineers, what do we have? People were joking, we have AstroTalk. That is the most famous AI app according to app downloads in India. That is not wrong, but that is not enough. Go back to the foundations of how AI is built. Does India have its own model? And even if India has its own model, is there a follow-up or a system or a company that is working on making it better every day? Why does it take an American company to give us training data in Telugu or Hindi or English or Tamil or whatever language to suit the Indian needs? What is the guarantee that those large language models do not have a bias against Indians? We are talking about getting rid of colonial mentality, but there is no follow-up in action. I'm not criticizing the government here, because in a democracy, in a limited, budget, in a limitation of resources, outcomes should be measured. There should be progress on outcomes. In this mission, there is no transparency and accountability there. How is the money spent? Do we have a strategy in place? Is it working? What to do to make it better? This needs to be followed up from time to time, and we need better consultation, because you cannot expect government functionaries to master AI. That's not their forte. That's not their strength. It is the private sector that needs to take the charge here. How do we identify a private sector that will not distort the market to gain a competitive edge and compromise on the values of India AI mission? That should be the focus of the government, because the very philosophy of government is minimum government, maximum governance. Government involvement should be to the tune that they will set an end objective, make AI accessible to the entire country, so that people will figure out how to use it and make it stronger. See, we all have cringe content on social media, which might be popular, but we also have some space for beautiful creators who are very imaginative and created opportunities for themselves. Technology can be democratic. Access to technology should be democratic. Otherwise, it will create inequality. And we need to act fast. The role of the state in this is to respond. There is a difference between reaction and response. Reaction is immediate. It's not well thought out. Response is well thought out, structured, and curated. India needs to respond quickly. What does it take to respond quickly? With accountability. You need people who understand this AI game better. And I still think we might have, a delay, but we can catch up very quickly because we should believe in the capabilities of our people. They just need, supporting environment. And these kind of things should be in public policy domain, and discussions should happen. More young minds should participate in democracy. They should come out and vote. They should come out and discuss, because the future of this country, when 55% of this country will have young people, the future is in their hands, and they disconnecting from democracy, whether they're civil service aspirants or not, is immaterial. They cannot afford to disconnect, because you see today a scenario where a lot of people from Telugu states move out of this country to the US, UK, Europe, Australia, whatnot, in a hope of a better lifestyle, better livelihood. And situations are not good there either. There, as much as 23% of the Indians who went back in the last 5 years are coming back with a loan. Somebody might be, rich enough, they want to retire, that's fine. But look at the data. There is an alarming rise in college debt. 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs. Imagine having 40 lakhs debt with no job, and you're supposed to come back and pay that debt. Imagine the kind of pressure they must be facing. Imagine the kind of situations they will be in. We must do something, right? Read the article in that context.